Before the video starts, it's important to note that this is the channel owner speaking. I know many people dislike AI, but I want to clarify that I only use it for narration. Mainly it's because, as you might have noticed, my spoken English isn't quite there yet. I realize this might hurt the experience or lower the quality a bit, but I hope you understand that I'm still working on my pronunciation so that I can eventually transition to using my real voice. Now, let's begin.
I must confess that I never expected to make a video about this. That's because, since the material is from a novel, videos like this usually don't get many views. To compensate for this, I set a goal of $80, $40 for reading the material live and $40 for making the video. However, we actually reached almost $100 in just 24 hours, so thank you very much. My videos are well received by this anime's fandom, but unless you're getting 200,000 views per video, it's hard to make a living from YouTube. Having people commission videos from me really helps to make up for the lack of views. Anyway, let's leave my ramblings about being a YouTuber aside. The material I'm going to talk about wasn't supposed to reach me until 2028 or 2029, so this video wasn't supposed to be released this year. Why was the publication date pushed forward so much? Let me give you some context. When Season 2 aired in 2021, a Blu-ray was released that delved deeper into the life of Elsa Granhiert. That story, which came with the Blu-ray, wasn't translated until just a few months ago, in 2025. This meant that we had to wait 4 years before we could read the novel included with Season 2. I had resigned myself to the fact that it would take another 4 years for the Blu-ray novel of Season 3 to reach us. However, I was pleasantly surprised when a friend told me that he had not only managed to get the Blu-ray, but had also translated it. So a big thank you to Wilhelm, a ReZero fan who is translating several of the novels from this extensive series into Spanish. I know that Witch Cult translations already do what Wilhelm does, but they only translate into English. Hopefully, Wilhelm will become their Spanish equivalent. In this video, I would like to share my thoughts on this piece of work, based on the live reading I did on stream, which lasted almost 6 hours. I should mention up front that this isn't the kind of reading with big revelations where mysteries are uncovered. However, it does feature interactions that we have never seen before, neither in the anime nor in other novels. For example, we see an interaction between Crusch and Beatrice, and a conversation between the royal knights Felix, Julius, and Reinhard, in which they discuss what they really think of Subaru. However, the conversation that I didn't realize I needed, and which turned out to be the most moving, was the one between Crusch and Hetaro. You might not think these conversations are a big deal, but I have a doctorate in ReZero and can explain why they are more interesting than you might think. Before we begin, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to those who support the membership of my English channel, and to a follower who, despite not being a member, generously contributed $50 to make this video possible. Thank you very much, Remote Planet. Welcome to the revelations of the ReZero Season 3 Blu-ray. You probably don't even remember who Hetaro was. He's one of Mimi's brothers. Mimi is the demi-human girl who's in love with Garfield. To be honest, I don't blame you if you don't remember him. I always confuse him with his brother Tibi. But Hetaro was hiding a dark secret that I never mentioned, and which very few people know. In reality, he's a character from the Konosuba universe who knows about Subaru's powers. I'm just kidding. Even if he doesn't have a big secret, there is a detail that I've never seen anyone bring up. To reveal it, let's go back to Season 1. Specifically, let's go back to when the battle squad fought the White Whale. At that time, Rem, Crusch, and some soldiers returned to the capital to receive medical treatment because they had pushed themselves too far. Among those who went back was Hetaro. His sister Mimi was still able to fight, so she stayed with Subaru. As reinforcements, not only did Julius arrive, but also Mimi's other brother, Tibe. Now that I've refreshed your memory, I'll ask you this. Why didn't we see Hetaro when Regulus attacked Crusch and Rem? Sure, we didn't see him, but he should have been in one of those carriages. The answer to this question came in the next part of the story. In the novel, we learn that Anastasia sent Crusch an invitation to a meeting in Pristella. We see this meeting take place in the anime later on, but what I'm telling you about happens days before that. Anna entrusted Hetaro with delivering the formal invitation to Crusch's camp. Although he agreed to go, Hetaro was uneasy the entire time. He was extremely nervous. To make matters worse, Felix acted like a jerk, accusing the boy of having hidden intentions and implying that Lady Anna had sinister motives. Crusch and Wilhelm had to step in to calm that annoying trap. When Crusch asked Wilhelm for advice about whether to accept Anastasia's invitation, he said that Hetaro was an honorable comrade-in-arms who had fought alongside him during the subjugation of the White Whale, so he trusted him. It was then that Hetaro said he hadn't really done much and felt bad about not being able to help afterwards. Everyone thought he regretted not going with Subaru to deal with Betelgeuse, but he was actually referring to his inaction when Regulus Corneus and Lei Baton Kaitos attacked Duchess Crusch. He explained that when the attack began, he had started running and fled the scene because he had sensed that he could not defeat those archbishops. He had regretted his cowardice ever since. But that guilt weighed even heavier on him that day because one of the people he had abandoned was standing right in front of him, Crusch. He regretted not turning back to support the Duchess when she needed it most. Perhaps if he had helped her, she wouldn't have lost her memories. When I read this, I finally understood why Felix was so angry with him. In a way, Hetaro was guilty of the state his lady ended up in. But before Felix could continue to pick on the boy, Crusch hugged Hetaro and told him that he had done the right thing, and that neither she nor the Crusch with memories held any resentment towards what had happened. In fact, she was glad that Hetaro hadn't suffered the same fate as her. Hetaro couldn't hold it in any longer and started crying, unable to stop apologizing for things that Crusch had already forgiven him for. Reading this moment made me gain much more respect for Crusch and Anastasia. That's because, when the scene ended, it was revealed that the reason Anna sent Hetaro specifically, and not his siblings, to deliver the invitation to Crusch, was because she knew her servant carried that weight of guilt. But let's move on to another interesting revelation from this story. Another interesting detail that was revealed, which personally helped me to understand a lot of things, was something involving the Sword Demon, the former Sword Saint and the current head of the Royal Guard. While we got to know Wilhelm and Theresia better in the anime, Marcus only appeared in a couple of episodes in Season 1. However, in the novels dealing with Lugunika's past or matters related to the kingdom, we see more of Marcus and his peculiar yet interesting worldview. He's a man who genuinely wants to do good, but he's frustrated by the corruption of certain institutions. Consequently, he decided to take matters into his own hands and start dispensing his own brand of justice. On this path, he meets a young Roswal and Russell fellow, the latter being the most interesting character in the novel so far. But I won't go into the details, as that's not the focus of this video. At least, not about that subplot exactly. You see, when Marcus allied himself with Roswal and Russell, he returned to the Royal Guard. I say returned, because he had already left. We know that Heinkel once tried to convince Marcus to return, but he turned a deaf ear to his pleas and even insulted him. I have always found it strange that Marcus insulted Heinkel because, while Heinkel is a bastard, he was still a respectable and decent human being at that time. It was this novel that finally provided us with the clue we needed to understand that response. From other novels, we know that when Theresia was alive, she would bring lunch to her husband, Wilhelm, who was the captain of the knights at the time. Marcus was just an ordinary knight then. On those days when she brought food to her husband, she would sometimes talk to Marcus and tease him, saying that he needed to find a partner. However, around her, the always serene and stoic Marcus showed an unusual side. He blushed and got nervous when talking to his captain's wife. It's never stated outright, of course, but reading those interactions is like watching a young guy get flustered just because his crush is talking to him. This one-sided crush takes an interesting turn when we learn that Marcus was a troublesome brat in the early days of his time in the Royal Guard, much like Garfield. That's why Wilhelm had to defeat him in combat and put him in his place. This revelation makes us suspect that something strange was going on when we find out that Marcus got nervous around the wife of the man who humiliated him. On top of that, his relationship with Heinkel provides yet another perspective on this complicated dynamic. As I said earlier, Marcus was always harsh with Heinkel. But why? There isn't an official answer, of course. But we can speculate that it was because Heinkel was the son of the man who had humiliated him, and the son of the woman he was interested in. Frustrated by this, he couldn't help but take it out on their son. I know this description of Marcus might not paint him in the best light, but we also have to remember that he was just a young adult in his early 20s at the time. So we couldn't expect him to be very mature. Besides, it's worth noting that while he did like Theresia, he always kept his distance and never made a move. Of course, it wouldn't have worked anyway, but you can still control yourself enough to avoid making unnecessary moves in situations you know are wrong, such as interfering in someone else's marriage. Interestingly, in this novel, Crusch lets her power-scaling side show when she asks Wilhelm who would win in a duel, Marcus or him. Wilhelm, being modest, says he isn't sure he'd win against Marcus. However, when the discussion turned to his wife's strength, he became evasive and refused to discuss it further, saying that he would defeat Marcus without a problem for her. As I said, this novel is filled with slice-of-life moments where the characters simply interact with each other and react to events in the world around them. Before moving on to my favorite scene, however, I wanted to comment on a few more interesting moments that this reading gave us. If you're a fan of Crusch, you'll really enjoy this story because it reveals some fascinating details about her and her surroundings. For instance, we learn that her father has returned to oversee the Karsten household. If you've read EX1, a Crusch story, you'll probably have noticed that her father was a recurring character. However, by the end of the novel, Crusch had succeeded her father, who then retired. However, following the cult's attack on Crusch, Lord Meckart Karsten had to return to assist with the family's internal administration. Even more interestingly, we now get official confirmation that Crusch already knows who Fourier Lugunica was. For those who don't know, Fourier Lugunica was one of the last princes of the kingdom and played a significant role in shaping the Crusch we know today. All of this is recounted in EX1, so the fact that Crusch has forgotten about him is akin to Subaru forgetting about Amelia. I realize that this might not seem very important to anime-only viewers, but trust me, if you read Crusch's novel, you'll see just how meaningful it is. Another interesting detail revealed in this novel concerns Priscilla's camp. Remember how Priscilla appeared unexpectedly at the meeting? Well, here we're told the reason why. It turns out that because of his position as head of the Astria family, Heinkel runs a large network of contacts who inform him of the movements of key people in the kingdom. Since there's always someone wanting a favor from him, one person gave him the tip about the candidates' meeting in Pristella. He immediately informed Priscilla, who wasn't initially interested in going. However, once she heard that she would be able to witness the meeting involving the ruined Astria family, she decided to go. This part is kind of funny because Heinkel never considered the possibility of running into his father and son again. Since Priscilla had already decided to attend, he couldn't back out. He resigned himself to drinking more alcohol than usual and showed up to the meeting drunk. The most interesting part, however, was Aldebaran's perspective. He predicted that the candidates' meeting would lead to an even bigger disaster than the first meeting in Season 1. He foresaw a huge disaster, but what really bothered him was the prospect of meeting Subaru again, which is peculiar considering everything the traitor is currently doing in Arc 9 of the ongoing novel. One thing I personally didn't like about the novel, maybe it's because of the translation, is that the night before the cult attacked the city, Priscilla speaks with Aldebaran and gives him permission to do whatever he has to keep things entertaining. Remember, Aldebaran didn't just kill cultists, he also killed many innocent people to clear a path for the good guys. The fact that Priscilla supposedly gave permission for all of this really changed my opinion of her for the worse. As I said before, perhaps I'm just idealistic, or maybe there was a minor translation error in that part, but I really didn't like the Sun Princess's last line. So, when a better translation comes out in 3 or 4 years, I'm going to reread that part to see if it was a misunderstanding or a translation error. On the other hand, I haven't mentioned Felt and her camp yet, but they also appear quite frequently and interact with the other characters. For instance, we learn how Felt got the clothes we see her wearing in Season 3. We also hear a cute story about how Camberly and Gaston bought those clothes for her, and how Gaston works hard to support his wife and adoptive daughter. The most interesting piece of lore, though, is when it's revealed that while Wilhelm and Subaru were talking under the moonlight, Crusch and Felt were chatting as well. It's also revealed that before losing her memories, Crusch really wanted to talk to Felt. This desire ties back to Crusch's novel. Simply put, she wanted to talk to Felt because if Felt were the last princess of the kingdom, she could potentially contract the royal disease, which killed Lugunica's rulers. Rosewall mentions this virus in Season 1. Felt thanks her for the concern, but says that her grandfather Rom and the mage Ezo are constantly running magical checkups to detect that illness in her health, and so far she hasn't shown any signs of it. After finishing that subject, they start talking about how they are both willing to help Reinhard and Wilhelm fix their family bonds. This last part was a nice detail because the next day, we see them create the right atmosphere for a reconciliation between grandfather and grandson. Too bad Heinkel showed up and ruined everything. Now let's move on to the last point and the scene from the thumbnail. A slice of life story wouldn't be complete without a hot spring scene. While the guys get to enjoy the scene of the candidates bathing, the girls and the femboys get their share with the Knights of Lugunica in the hot springs. Honestly, I remember laughing so much at the author's descriptions. His writing alternated between detailed descriptions of the candidates' majestic bodies and unexpected actions. For example, the author writes that Emilia and Beatrice became violent and domineering while showering and washing Felt's body. Obviously, this is written half-jokingly. Apparently, they had to be rough because Felt wouldn't let them bathe her. It also describes how Anastasia dominated the amnesiac Crusch and forced her to let Anna wash her body. Otherwise, Emilia and Beatrice would be rough with her. It was better to leave it to Anna, who would be gentle with an inexperienced, naive girl like the green-haired candidate. Yes, I'm not kidding. Those are the words used. The amnesiac Crusch gives in and accepts after Anna tells her that she feels lonely. Crusch only accepts after asking Anna to be kind. Honestly, I'm pretty sure Tr4ps wrote those lines knowing the double meaning they carried. If you're wondering what Priscilla was doing, she was staying elsewhere, so there were no interactions between her and the others. Unfortunately, we didn't get all of the knights bathing in the same place. We only got Julius, Felix, and Reinhard in the hot springs. There, they talked about everything that had happened that past year, their lives when they first became knights, and how much they wished for more peaceful moments like that one. Until the topic shifted to Subaru. Felix wasn't really up for it since he feels that Subaru has surpassed him. It's also revealed that Julius was busy after Season 1 because he was ensuring that details about the beating he gave Subaru didn't leak. For those who don't know, Julius understood why Subaru acted the way he did. He knew it was wrong, but he was also thankful that the protagonist stepped in to defend Emilia against the Wise Council's accusations. As a way of showing his gratitude and admiration, Julius personally made sure those rumors never spread outside the circle of knights. Reinhard, on the other hand, admits that while he may be stronger than Subaru physically, he doesn't think he's stronger mentally. They all laugh and say that if Subaru were here, he'd probably say, "That's not a big deal." Then the scene shifts, and we see Subaru bathing with Joshua in another place, literally saying that line while showing the scars from his fight against the Witch Beast dogs back in Arc 2. Subaru says some interesting things there, including talking about the ridiculous spectacle he made against Julius 1 year ago. He admits he's surprised the rumor never leaked to the public. Julius's younger brother, Joshua, thought about telling Subaru that Julius had suppressed the rumors, but he decided not to. They also talk about other small, banal things, stuff that doesn't sound interesting on its own. But who cares? Not everything you talk about with friends in a quiet moment has to be deep or important. The funniest and strangest part, by far, was the revelation about why Subaru didn't bathe with Felix and the others. According to Subaru, he was afraid his male reproductive organ might react if he saw the Tr4ps' naked body. I'm joking. He doesn't say it exactly like that. But he does say that he wouldn't know how to feel seeing Felix half-naked. Then he adds that Julius and Reinhard probably felt the same way at the beginning. After that, he projects his insecurities onto Joshua, accusing him of coming to this remote bath with him because he also wouldn't know how to react if he saw Felix like that. Joshua just yells at him, "Subaru, what the hell are you talking about?" And that's how the novel ends. Honestly, it's a story that really complements part of Episode 1 of Season 3. I say part because the novel only covers the boys' first night in Priestella, while the episode continues beyond that first night. It's only about 130 pages long, so if you feel like reading it, I encourage you to buy it. In this video, I'm just narrating my experience reading the novel and talking about what I liked most. Obviously, I'm not encouraging the illegal piracy of this paid product. There isn't a recommendation for another video this time, but there is a special video related to the future of the channel. If you enjoy my content, I'd appreciate it if you watched it. See you soon.